Do you want to go ahead?
We have a couple people joining us, but we can get started.
Okay. Yep, we can go ahead then. All right, everyone, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 1:33, and you are at the Data and Systems Integration Committee. The first thing on our agenda is to do welcome and introductions. I can start, and then we can just go around. My name is Joy Andrade, and I'm on the HPI board.
Liz Sheehan, HPI board.
Christina Ellison, New Beginnings Bluegrass.
Jeff Herron, Manager, LFUCG, Office of Homelessness Prevention and Intervention.
Adam Kuhn, LFUCG, HMIS Data Analyst.
Marty Jones, Community Action Council.
Erica Dominguez, Lexington Rescue Mission.
Diane Fleet, Greenhouse 17, and HPI board.
And Sherry Pennington with Mountain Comprehensive Care Center is also with us, had to step out for a call. I'm guessing we are subject to summer vacations as people gear up to go back to school. So we will have a very intimate meeting.
Yes. All right. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes of June 4th, 2025. Are there any comments or questions or corrections that need to be made regarding those minutes if you've had a chance to take a look? No. Okay. All right. Since there are none, we can go ahead and vote to approve those. So it's a full board, right? Okay. So all those who approve.
We have to take a motion.
Oh, a motion.
To approve.
I
Motion to
move.
approve in a
I
second.
motion to approve. There you
Okay.
go.
And then you
There you go. Thank you. Okay.
Need a
All those
motion.
in favor?
need a second.
Dang it. Second. Sorry, guys. I'm way off today. I literally, my brain is not functioning. All right, second. I need a
You have a
second.
motion and a second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, it passes. Fantastic.
Done.
All right. So new business. Adam is going to kindly cover the 2025-2026 data quality plan.
And before we begin, does anybody need me to project it on the screen, or do you have a packet, either hard copy or electronic? Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay, cool. I think this is page 7 in our packet. It's a quick review. We don't usually make a lot of big changes to data quality plan as far as I understand it every year. We've just highlighted the things that we'll talk about today. The first item is on that first page. We've added a data collection standard subsection. The first bullet there is just language that we took out of the previous introduction. The second just says that our local system will be in compliance with HUD's data standards, and that we also reserve the right to collect additional data. Really, that's to address recent changes that were made to standards. I think intuitively we think about optimizing data standards as making our data collection more robust, adding things. This time HUD actually took a data point away, so this is just language that we're including here where we reserve the right to collect additional data, so that we can continue to collect things that HUD might remove from federal reporting standards. We'll get into that a little bit more as we go down on page 3 of your data quality plan, I think page 9 in your packet. We've got a table here with all of our data elements. What has changed for this year, starting on October 1st, is HUD has removed gender from federal reporting requirements, and they're going to use instead sex. We've talked about this a little bit in DSI on and off, I think. Sex is not technically replacing gender. The values that we've used for gender will not be used for sex. This will be a new data element. For our HMIS users in the room, this is actually going to be a project-specific data element, so it won't be on that client profile page with our UDEs. This is going to be within your project assessments. Locally, though, we will be keeping gender. That's why both of them occur here. So we'll be collecting sex within the project, but gender will look as it always has for our providers. That's just something we wanted to continue to collect, I think, across the state, actually, right?
Yeah. Pretty much all three of the continuums of care are on the same page. Another reason that you see all the highlights is because we also don't yet have a copy of the 2026 HMIS data standards. We have some pieces of information that have come from webinars or technical assistance, but usually by now we would have had the document for probably several months, and there would have been public comment periods. HUD would go back and make several revisions before implementation. At this point, we're expecting that we may not even have the data standards until October 1, which is generally when they go into effect. So we still wanted to get this before you to talk about what changes we do know of, and make sure you know that it's all tentative at the moment. Part of the reason why we would seek to keep gender within our system is, as Adam mentioned, this would not be adjustments to the existing data point, but it would be a new field that's going to be placed in. So for continuity of data, most of our data is going to be coded under gender from that client profile as a universal data element. If we completely remove gender, then we kind of lose ability to do some long-term kind of analysis of our data. We also don't know with certainty that this isn't a change that's going to switch back after a short period of time. So we just feel like it's best for us to keep our users in that practice of entering gender on the client profile, and locally we will still consider that a universal data element. And then we will, as HUD is asking us to do, put sex in your project assessments. So we will have both data sets available, and it gives us a better ability to assess our system and our needs.
And just realize too, because these are separate fields, like your answer for sex within the project will obviously not carry over to gender. Those are two things that you'll have to fill out separately. The other important note for this change is that your clients who will have been participating in programming prior to October 1st, like if you have somebody in housing, they will kind of be grandfathered in. So you don't have to complete the sex field technically per HUD for people who are already enrolled prior to October 1st. This is going to be folks entering programming after October 1st, on or after October 1st. We can collect that sex element if we want to, but it is not technically required by HUD for people. You won't have to do a full inventory of all your people involved in your programming. We did also introduce a little acceptable level of error for gender that was previously at 0. We made it 5, just assuming that there might be a little bit of confusion or navigation with clients as we unpack both of these elements with them. So did make a margin of error there for our users in general. At the bottom, they've also added a new data element for SSVF, the mental health consultation. I've got the pick list, but basically it looks like they're just wanting those SSVF providers to prompt clients with the opportunity to get a mental health consultation. But that is specifically for our SSVF folks. That's it for the new that's being introduced as far as our data elements go. We do have highlights on our links just because, like Jeff said, we don't actually have the standards. We expect those to change, so that might change a little bit on this sheet. But otherwise, the only changes are going to be dates across like our data collection, anticipated dates, and like the 25-26 stuff. So if folks have questions, happy to take them about the plan. Otherwise, we will put it to a vote.
And we do expect that both the COC APR and ESG CAPER are going to be updated, and those will be labeled as 2026 versions. Usually the year on those is reflective of the year that corresponds with the data standards and data dictionary, not necessarily the time that they were released. And just to give one other thought around the changes with gender and sex, this is also another way that your team might be able to better honor people's identities. And if you're working solely off of HMIS data and only tracking sex, then you might lose sight of the fact that someone might have an identity that doesn't match with the way that we're now being mandated to collect this information. So it also gives you an ability to include a marker that's more consistent with how somebody wants to be addressed.
I had a question. So for the gender and sex, so I know that obviously we would be required to report sex and not gender. However, I know we're also collecting gender. Is that something that would be like submitted federally, or is that gender field only internal?
It's just internal.
Yeah, it's going to be internal. For example, since they have not yet finalized this, when we did our point in time count, we submitted no information about gender or sex. So we have in our official submission a big hole in our data because it's there every other year except for 25. Locally, we still assess that information, but it doesn't appear in our official submission, and it won't appear in any official HUD submissions until they make changes to these standards again.
Okay. Well, and that maybe kind of leads to my second question. So they obviously still have not given you all the data standards, and that goes into effect, what, October 1st, you said?
Generally.
Yeah. And so are you all in any way penalized if not having updated the standards at that point, even though they haven't been able, like they haven't given you appropriate time to make those changes?
So that's kind of a gray question in the sense that, usually we're reliant on our vendor, and usually they have a lot more lead time. So depending on the timeline that they're getting coding specifications to vendors, that will determine whether or not we can actually make October 1 work. And I don't know for sure. They may change and buck tradition, and this might not be an October 1 implementation for the standards. It's possible that when they release it, they'll give us a further date. Perfect example, last year we applied for the COC NOFO as a 2-year NOFO. We were not supposed to have a competition this year. We've received a notice that we will have a 25 competition. There's some vague language that gives us some insight into the priorities or requirements that we're likely to see, but we don't have a NOFO yet. Usually we would have a COC NOFO as early as June, sometime July, and usually we're wrapping up our entire process around September. We are very unlikely to be able to turn around a COC application, including our local competition, and then all of the benchmarks that we have to hit for HUD. We have to notify our project applicants at least 30 days in advance of submitting our collaborative application. We have to post our application to the internet at least 2 weeks before submission to HUD. We can't hit any of that without significant time. If they were to release a NOFO today, we would be very lucky to be able to complete everything by the end of September. So I think we're going to see some things that are going to be creeping later and later into the year. Same thing with point in time count. We would typically be submitting that around April. The official submission this year wasn't until like mid to late May.
For the sake of our providers, though, I do think HUD has specifically mentioned October 1. A lot of the notes in this packet or in this plan are from a webinar from our vendor, but we should anticipate implementing this change October 1st until HUD says anything else, because that, I believe, is a date from them specifically. Any other questions?
I don't know, do you think, I know we're saying of like the current enrollees grandfathered in, but if we don't go in and put sex, do you think that's going to flag errors on our reporting?
I would say it's probably the best practice to go ahead and enter, just so that both are there, and that, for example, like I don't know how the APR and the CAPR will be coded, and I don't know if it will have some kind of logic that will read that the error doesn't apply if the client was in the program before implementation of the standards. I'm going to call that a long shot.
Just go ahead and do it.
So it would be the safest way to ensure good data quality.
Anything else? Okay,
Then I will fill in for Marissa. She's in an all-day training today. So usually it's board meetings that you hear me talk forever, but you're going to get it today as well. So first would be local assessment tool updates. We do have our new assessment tool live in HMIS in the coordinated entry project. That should now be the default assessment tool that you will see. We do still have the VI SPDAT available within the system, and it will continue to be available for some time. One reason being that KHC still uses the VI SPDAT for their coordinated entry system. But also, we are going to have a period of time where we're probably going to need to look at both assessments as we make referrals, knowing that some of our long-term individuals that have been on that list for a significant period of time may not yet have an assessment that would give us that new score. So definitely be working with the new assessment tool as you put it in. A couple notes on that. There are going to be, just like the previous assessment, 3 versions. One for adults. You would do that for individuals, like, for example, if they were a household that did not have minor children, each of the adults would receive an assessment. We have a transition age youth assessment, ages 18 to 24, and then one for families. Another note on this will be that we've been having some discussions about the auto calculation of scoring criteria. We explored with our vendor, and it would actually be a significant cost to us to have them build to where it can automatically score the assessments. And we actually right now have a working report that will calculate all of the scoring for us. It just doesn't appear for the user when they initially enter. We don't think that's a bad idea. We've had concerns in the past about providers potentially telling the individual their score, and then everyone gets hung up on, I'm a 7, I'm a 7. And we don't really want that to be the case. We really want this to be something that is more individualized, and we're going to instead really focus on running that report on a regular basis, and we will also discuss that within our coordinated entry or housing triage meetings. So providers have opportunities to know how their clients scored, and for example, if they scored for PSH, if there's needs for follow-up documentation to be completed. But we think it helps move us away from both clients and providers clinging too closely to that score. Something else that we would point out is that we have given a tentative name to this assessment tool. We're currently calling it the Lexington Housing Assessment Tool, or LexHat. We'll see how that sticks, and you might potentially see us start using that in place of the VI SPDAT, and we'll update our policies accordingly. We really do want to thank everybody for their participation both in the development of the tool and as we've worked to develop training materials. With training materials, we do have several trainings that have already been prepped. Hopefully we've discussed that part of our goal in this assessment was, one, to move away from a assessment tool that has kind of no longer held status as a best practice, and something that better meets our local needs, hopefully better indicating acuity of need. But the other reason for it is we really hope to be able to reach a broader network of stakeholders to participate in coordinated entry as access points. Typically, we have a lot of resistance when we talk to people outside of our field about them directly doing assessments. They feel like this is something that I need to send them to the rescue mission. I need to send them to New Beginnings or Mountain Comp. I need to send them to community action. What that does is it overburdens our system. And technically, the questions that we're asking, so long as somebody has some baseline training, we're not talking a clinical assessment. We don't need it to be only a handful of people in our community that can do that. So our hope is by creating a tool that is friendly, accessible, pretty plain in its language, that we'll be able to attract new people so that, for example, if Health First sees somebody in their offices that are in the healthcare for the homeless program, they could actually potentially go ahead and have an assessment completed there. Right now, if people do complete assessments, they're generally trying to complete them on paper and then send it to our office to then input into the system. So we just have a lot of spots where capacity can be improved for our entire system if we can incentivize some participation of new individuals. To that aim, we have 3 different series of trainings. Marissa's done a 101, a 102, and a 103. First is going to be just very basic concept. What is a continuum of care? Help them understand who is part of our continuum, what are the goals, what are the things that we are tasked by HUD with doing. Then we're going to have one that's going to be focused on what is coordinated entry. So recognizing the difference between connecting an individual with this assessment or having them pursue Section 8 housing or housing choice vouchers, which actually sit outside of our system. We want people to know that this is not a magic one and done list. This is specifically for resources dedicated to our homeless population. And then that third part will really be closer to teaching the actual assessment tool, making sure that we go over intent, areas where there are assessor input, how to work with the language if somebody has issues comprehending a particular item. We really want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with the items on the tool and create some consistency no matter which access point that somebody would interact with. Marissa wanted me to make sure that I told you that there will be a webinar to be announced for later this month. That will be open to the entire continuum, not just our providers that regularly do assessments, although we strongly encourage if you have somebody, especially those that haven't been as heavily involved in discussions about development of the new tool, maybe somebody who doesn't participate in our housing triage meetings but does assessments for your shelter or program, we really want you to have somebody present there. We'll also record that and make sure that that is available on the back end. But anytime that there is live attendance, it's a lot easier, I think, for people to do things like ask questions and get clear and immediate answers. Any questions about our local assessment tool updates? All right, hearing none, we'll go into the coordinated entry report for second quarter of calendar year 25. The full report was included in your packet. So during the course of this period, we have about 1,030 persons who are currently on the list in some form. This would include 36 individuals added to the by name list in April, 63 added in May, and 23 in June. We also assess the length of time that individuals are within the project, both on an average and median for both leavers and stayers. Looking at the average for those that are leavers who would exit the coordinated entry project either through placement in permanent housing or potentially relocating out of our system would be fluctuating greatly. We see that it started at 147 days in April and has increased to about 360 days in June, so roughly about a year. And the median is not a lot better at 213 days. For the stayers, we have some folks that are in our system and in the project for almost 2 years. One of the reasons that we wanted to draw attention to this is we've been trying to encourage a lot of conversation about move-on strategies, both as a system and as individual projects. Part of the reason that we don't see a lot of quick movement through coordinated entry is the level of limited resources. And we know that it's not going to be the solution for everyone, especially timely, but we do want to make sure that we are actively working with individuals who might have a greater ability to be self-sufficient and look if there might be a strategy for move on. Does this individual still need the full package of what your housing program provides? Do they need intensive case management supports or desire intensive supports? From my direct service days, I know sometimes you get working with somebody and after a while, really what they're participating in the program for is subsidized rent, not necessarily the need for the support services. That's going to be different for everyone, but if there are folks who have stabilized, who are doing really well, let's think about taking steps like signing them up for income-based housing, when wait lists are open for things like Section 8 or public housing, making application, seeing if there's even strategies to increase their income and maybe help them transition to carrying rent on a unit by themselves with maybe some kind of short-term financial assistance. We are essentially not going to see a massive increase to our grant resources overnight, so we also have to be a part of freeing up some of those resources for new individuals to be served. Moving down into referrals made, you'll see that we had a total of 13 individuals that were referred to housing in this quarter. The majority of those were rapid rehousing referrals, with 10, and then 3 that were made for permanent supportive housing. This also goes back to that previous point about move on. It's permanent supportive housing where we see kind of the longest waits and the fewest referrals. Obviously, some of our PSH folks are probably going to need that resource for a significant period of time, but not everyone will. Additionally, we have to be equipped if a mandate comes down that rental assistance is going to be limited to a 2-year period. Right now, we passed through the federal government without that being imposed this time around, but we don't know if that could change in future years. So still thinking about the goal being for a significant portion of our population to achieve self-sufficiency at some time. Then moving down into acuity of those that are enrolled in coordinated entry. So you are going to see VI SPIDAT scores here, and then you will continue to see those scores as we move forward, as well as the scores on our new assessment, which officially went into effect July 1. We had most of those individuals falling in the area of a 5 to a score of an 11. So that would be kind of the high end of rapid rehousing to the lower end of permanent supportive housing. Out of referrals made, we had 9 referrals that were successful in rapid 8 in rapid rehousing and 3 in permanent supportive housing. And then we had 2 referrals for rapid rehousing that were not successful. One was an individual and one was for a family. We also are assessing the length of time, not just by how long someone's enrolled in the coordinated entry project, but also the period from enrollment to receiving a referral, and then from enrollment to actually entering housing. So we are seeing an average length of time between enrollment and referral of about 1.5 years, and then slightly higher at 492 days average between enrollment and move into housing. We also have the successful housing move-ins. We would have had 5 in April, 9 in May, and 2 in June. That includes 11 for rapid rehousing and 5 for permanent supportive housing. The reason why these numbers actually exceed the number of referrals within the period, we would have had some individuals referred in a prior quarter that didn't move into housing until this quarter. We've also made a lot of efforts to focus on our utilization rate. That ties in with us revamping our housing inventory or HIC count form, trying to make sure that we get that information as accurate as possible, but so that we can also do better assessment of our utilization. What you'll probably see here is that we could definitely improve in the number of rapid rehousing placements that we would have. We had somewhere between a 66% utilization rate for rapid rehousing in April to the high end for this quarter being 74% in May. That also would tie in with some of the things that we have going on within our system in terms of that length of time that it's taking and the small number of referrals. We have roughly about 25 to 30% of our rapid rehousing capacity that's not being utilized. That could be things like new projects that are slow to implement. That could be things like projects where there's a staffing issue, where maybe there's a period of time that no one has moved into housing. But definitely just something we want to take a look at as a system, but also at the project level, at least quarterly, so we can continue to identify strategies to improve that utilization. Something else to consider, we actually get scored year after year in the COC application for the number of rapid rehousing units that we have in use on the night of the point in time count. And literally, it is assessed, did we increase from the prior year? Yes or no? If it's a yes, we get the points. If it's a no, we lose all the points in that area. It's a very arbitrary measure. It's also looking at one fixed date within the year. It's not considering utilization throughout the entire year. But knowing that, that's another incentive that we have to gain additional points on our application by having a consistently high utilization rate. For permanent supportive housing, we are seeing a significantly higher utilization rate, which makes sense. We have a lot of long-term stayers in those programs. For permanent supportive housing, utilization was between 89% in June and the highest being 92% in April. One other note that Marissa wanted to make sure that we mentioned was another factor in calculation of that length of time for individuals that would be recommended to be referred to a permanent supportive housing resource. Obviously, they have to meet chronic homeless status. So if they were assessed being just a little bit shy of that, part of the time might have been waiting until they hit the mark on having 12 months of cumulative or consecutive homelessness that would make them eligible for permanent supportive housing. Marissa also wanted to give kudos to providers who conducted housing move-ins during Q2. She said that there was a really, really good length of time between project entry and housing move-in date for both rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. She said those move-ins were extremely timely. And especially when we look at how long overall individuals wait between entry and move-in, it looks like our providers did a really good job of getting those referrals moved in quickly. Any questions about the coordinated entry report?
I don't have a question about the report, and this might be more of a side note that we can talk about a Greenhouse 17, but one of the things you were talking about earlier, and you said, we're going to kind of look at a comparison between the new Lex Hat and the new VI, or the old VI, and see how that looks. So when we went to the by name list, there was a couple of people that we kind of liked. They're in shelter, we kind of liked, but they didn't quite score, so we popped down, but we kind of liked them. Like we'd kind of wanted them for our pick. But when we did, just out of curiosity, we did a VI and they scored okay. So I guess as a user, would it be okay to chat with you all about it? Or is it pretty firm? Like when you were talking a bit about, we don't want to just be acuity. I'm a 7, I'm a 7, I'm a 7. Just sort of curious in the flexibility, a little bit of that. Is it worth even advocating, or should I just be quiet?
I would say we definitely want to bring discussions to housing triage into platforms like this meeting, where we would have consideration for how do scores compare for the same individual or household across those two assessment tools. We've largely committed to not wanting to make additional changes to the assessment tool until we have a significant period of time that we can really assess its effectiveness. I think we're aiming for a year. If there was something more urgent that were identified, we could obviously collectively agree to do that. But we need to have that information, and it should be an ongoing conversation. I would say it would really be helpful within the housing triage meetings, because that's where several other agencies are going to have their folks who are doing enrollments and doing a lot of assessments, and we can have some robust conversation. We want to keep some running notes about what we're seeing, so that as we move forward, it's possible that what you're seeing is something that needs to be addressed about our tool. And we need that information to collect and kind of have a running list that we can, when we are at a stage where we feel like we should make some changes.
And it might be fine, because the other piece then is, do agencies have the ability to kind of bump back and go, I know this person's a 5, but.
And so I think that's a two-pronged question. It may have just been a choice of language, but initially when it was, we like these people, we would like to have them in the program. Well, that's kind of what coordinated entry was intended to shift us away from. We don't want organizations to just cherry pick their clients. We don't want to choose the clients who are likable or the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We want to make sure that it's serving the most vulnerable persons within our population, and that it's an objective process. What I do think in that we need to pursue is, if there is somebody who it's not just a matter of liking the client, but thinking that the actual acuity reading might not be accurate. Let's unpack those situations and talk about them. Because, for example, HUD does not mandate that we have to operate our coordinated entry system with any set acuity ranges. When we were doing the VI SPDAT, the ranges that we had selected for rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing were what the developer of the tool had suggested, but nowhere did HUD mandate that we had to use those scales. The only thing that they really mandate is that our referrals had to go through coordinated entry. And we have to have a coordinated entry system, and it has to have certain capabilities. So we can, as a local system, change things. We could make formal policy changes. We could also choose to refer someone who maybe on our tool is scoring for permanent supportive housing and put them in rapid rehousing. If we do think that they might have the chance to succeed there, it's a question of, is that person better served to have an opportunity at housing and support, or are they better served by continuing to be homeless until a permanent supportive housing program has an opening that they can be referred to? A lot of communities even have an implemented practice of taking folks that would score for permanent supportive housing and putting them in rapid rehousing as bridge housing until there is some kind of a permanent supportive housing resource available. We've not elected to do that because with our overall level of resources, what we would essentially do is knock all those people of rapid rehousing acuity out of any kind of chance of getting a referral, because we would have so many people that we would be using that resource for as bridge housing. And what is the bridge to? We don't necessarily have another source that can pick them up on the end at present. But those are all things that we locally determine. So I think that's worth investigating on the individual level. Is that a referral that maybe is appropriate to go ahead and make for your project? And then it's appropriate for us to interrogate at a system level, because we can always redefine our ranges and our scoring however we see fit and whatever we think serves our local community.
And I will say, like is probably a little bit subjective. There probably wasn't genuine, but I also think I think it is truthful. We liked them for the rapid rehab, DVBI, we thought that would be a successful place for them.
Then yes,
Yes.
100% on the same page, bring that to us, let's talk about that. Because one, you're a new project, you need to scale up, and you need to be able to spend your dollars. And then the other thing would just be, we want to best serve people. So let's give people opportunities and let's help them be successful. I appreciate a very thoughtful question, like the conversation from that. Other stuff? Feels so weird that it's this few people and this quiet. All right, well, if there's no more questions, I'll let Adam speak.
I was gonna say, Diane, it's like, that's our job, is to advocate for the people that we're serving and that we know a little better than what.
Well, and we're
an
really
assessment
behind, and it was like,
saying.
here was 2 candidates that got popped
We're sick of
over, and
them
we're like,
saying no.
oh, we want those candidates
New
to meet
Beginnings
the
is a
need.
really good example of having those conversations. We don't always have them in housing triage, sometimes it's offline. But like, for example, because their program has a target population, if we're looking for individuals that meet SMI criteria and we've served all of the individuals that are on our list that are permanent supportive housing acuity scores, we're not gonna just wait until somebody else appears. We're gonna start going down into the rapid rehousing acuity and selecting those clients if they would meet the chronic homeless requirement. Also, they've had a couple people probably that they've taken that might need a higher level of care, but we know that they're not served by being on the street, so we have viewed this as, let's get them stabilized and then help connect them to what is the right level of care. Those are absolutely conversations that we should have individually and as a group.
Thank you.
All right, HMIS training and announcements from Adam.
And do we need to go back and vote on data quality plan?
Oh, did we not vote? No, I guess we did not. We do.
Nervously waiting
Thank you.
for you to say vote.
So we'll go backwards on the agenda. Is there a motion for approval of the 2025-26 data quality plan? All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any additional discussion or questions? Assuming not, since we already ran through it. Messy day in Robert's Rules of Order. All right, all those members in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Okay, cool. Training, you've got it on your packet, but we are missing a date, I think, for our September session. So we do have the August session next Thursday. I have room for one more person if we've got a provider here who's thinking about anybody. Would probably take that new person up to the end of this week. And then our September session will be the second Thursday of the month, which I believe is September 11th. Reminder, our new users are in person still at the Government Center. And then we'll have our end user session, which is still virtual, on September 9th in the afternoon at 2 o'clock. Would recommend, I assume at that end user we'll have more information about standards, hopefully. So thinking about gender and sex and all these changes, definitely make sure to send some folks from your organization so that we can communicate whatever updates we have from HUD there to everybody in case there are questions. And I think that's it for training. Questions about those sessions or items?
And Marissa's gonna do separate ones for the end user group on.
Yes,
Right.
the coordinated entry is a different set of trainings. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Are there any other issues or public sharing? With our really large group, a lot to say. Okay, all right, so our next meeting will occur on October 1st at 1:30 here, same place. All right, well, if that's all, then we can go ahead and adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.